I should grab my other one, but I will when I'm done. Anyways, uh, I'm gonna be talking about Edward Eddy Adams. Tell me if you can hear me well, because I don't have my earbuds. So,
I can hear you.
right. He was born in April 23rd, 1887, and his name when he was born was William Joseph Wallace. Completely different. I just realized you can see stuff. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Let me just set my phone down.
Reverse your camera and then set it on like a hard surface.
That's what I just did. I had it reversed already, but yeah. Okay. Anyways, he was born in Hutchinson, Kansas, and lost his father at a young age. And apparently, not long after, his mother got remarried, and he deeply resented his stepfather. In about the early 1900s, he learned barbering, so it's barbering, as a trade, and relocated to Wichita. Is that how you say that? Kansas. And not long after is when he got into a life of crime. It started off as bootlegging, petty theft, and automobile theft. He was known for his charm and charisma, and by the 1900s, his wife had left him over his infidelity and criminal lifestyle. So clearly not that charismatic, because she left him. That was paving the way for his transition into organized crime. In 1920, he teamed up with outlaws Ray and Walter Majors and ended up robbing a gambling hall in Kansas City, Missouri. During the holdup on September 5th, a pew-pew battle erupted, and Frank Gardner, who was at this time known as a gambler and a pew-pew man, he was unalived during this. Not long after, Adams was arrested and convicted of schmurder and sentenced to life imprisonment in February of 1921. His accomplices, though, received a much lighter sentence and only got 5 years each, which doesn't make sense. So, that leads into his first escape from prison. He was transported to the Missouri prison when he jumped off the train. I mean, kudos for that. He soon joined Julius Feeney. Sorry, I had to do it. I had to do it. Feeney! To rob a bank and a general store in Colson, Kansas on February 11th. Within 6 days, he was recaptured near Garden Plain and sentenced to 10 to 30 years in the Kansas State Prison, adding to his life term. So, this idiot has, what? I don't know what they consider a life sentence. I think it's like 100 years. So, like 130 years he's got. No one would steal 100 nowadays. Let's be real. Okay. So then his second escape on August 13th, which is about 5 months later, 6 months later from his first escape, Adams and several inmates sabotaged the prison's power plant and scaled the walls to freedom. They reformed what became known as the Adams Gang with Billy, I don't know how to say his last name, as the getaway driver. So then, after he escaped, there was a wave of robberies. And in September of that year, he robbed banks in Rose Hill and Hayesville for $10,000. In Hayesville, he pew-pew whipped an 82-year-old man who later unalived from skull fractures. In October 8th, he escaped. It says he escaped a posse near Annalee, probably saying around Kansas, after a pew-pew fight wounded a deputy. 11 days later, after stealing silver from a bank in Iowa, they were confronted near Murray and pew-pewed a farmer named C.J. Jones. Jesus, what is his body? 4 now? Yeah, it's 4. Then there were further crimes, including robbing 11 stores in Kansas and abducting 2 motorcycle officers outside Wichita and later setting their motorcycles ablaze. So we continue on with the crimes. November 5th, he allegedly ambushed and fatally pew-pewed a patrolman, A.L. Young. Is reportedly motivated by jealousy over a love interest. Dun, dun, dun. And then, let's see, train robbery. They hit a Santa Fe express train near Ottawa, Kansas, making off with $35,000 in cash and valuables, which they said was considered their most profitable robbery because they weren't really getting much. So, November 20th, 1921, Adams and his associates, which were Foster, Nellie Miles, and George McFarland, they were joyriding when they were pulled over by a motorcycle officer in Wichita. A pew-pew was sent out from their vehicle, which unalived the patrol officer, Robert Fitzpatrick. Later that night, there was a gas shortage because they didn't realize their gas can was out of gas for them to refill, like on the side of the road. So it forced them to stop at a farm. He tried stealing a car from a farmer named George Oldham. Oldham resisted and was pew-pewed and unalived. The next day, while officers were looking for McFarland at his home, Adams encountered the officers, pew-pewed, and wounded an officer named Ray Kastner, and then escaped. November 22nd, which is 2 days after this little spree started, Adams attempted to rent a car. How noble, I guess. Okay. But the owner recognized him and alerted the police. During the confrontation, Detective Charles Hoffman was pew-pewed and unalived. Officer Bowman was wounded, and Adams was pew-pewed and unalived by Officer D.C. Stuckey, and Adams unalived at the age of 34. So that was finally the end of his little reign of terror. Jeez. His body... Why? His body was publicly displayed, it's weird, in the city undertaking parlor in Wichita, drawing over 9,000 viewers in total. He was believed to have murdered 7 people, including 3 Wichita policemen, and wounded more than a dozen others in just 14 months. Following his unaliving, 18 accomplices were arrested. 4 were sent to Kansas State Penitentiary with Frank Foster, and all of those the 4 that went to Kansas State Penitentiary all received life sentences. So it is confirmed that, yes, he unalived 7. Let's see. He ended up from 1920-1921 was his spree. Like I said earlier, 14 months. And it made him one of the Midwest's most feared outlaws during Prohibition. Combining his bank heists, jailbreaks, and just cold-blooded murders. Let's see.
Everybody, don't forget to tap, share, and comment. We don't ask for gifts or anything, but we would like for people to actively help boost the live and get it out there.
Oh, Kristen, he escaped twice. And on the second escape is when this all ended up happening. Where was I? So most back then, most gangsters were focused on profit. It was all about the money they could bring in, what they could gain from it. With Adams, there was profit involved, but it was more about personal vendettas, and he was just impulsive. He was violent. He was jealous. If anyone got too near someone he was even interested in, just interested, not even really anything going on with them, he ended up going after the person. Um, let's see. So I think that's actually it. But yeah, he was unalived in a pew pew out. I want to say the SHOOT. So that is how his crimes ended. I'm pretty sure, honestly, if they wouldn't have got him then, he would have just kept going. Because it was within 2 days. He unalived, I think it was 3 people, but a total of 7 in the 14 months. And a dozen injured. So, yeah, he was pretty messed up. All right.
That was a good one, Mama. Thank you, Aries. It's your turn now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them. Just a reminder, please tap the screen. It does help boost the live. Comments are also greatly appreciated. We ask that you just kind of do those things. If you know anybody who should be watching, definitely share it to them. But we just ask that, you let us know if you got questions or anything like that as we're going. Don't save them to the end. And yeah, Aries, you're up next.
I was looking for that image the whole time while I was on pause. That's why I kept coming back so I wouldn't get kicked out. I did find something, not that, but anyways. So what I'm doing is Helle Helle I'm having a hard time pronouncing her name. I think it's Helle Crafts. It's like Helle Helle Crafts. Yeah, it's Helle Crafts. Sorry. Um, Basically, what happened to her? This was in 1986. Let me put up a picture, actually. Okay. This is the picture that I have. Her nationality, she's Danish. This is from Denmark. Or this happened in Denmark. Or no, she was born in Denmark, but this happened in Connecticut, in the U.S. She was a flight attendant. Her husband was Richard Crafts. And basically what happened was that they got married in 1975. She settled with him in New... I'm so sorry. My brain is not braining. She settled with him in Connecticut. She continued working as like a flight attendant while raising their 3 kids. And then in 1986, she began to suspect that like he was doing extramarital things. And she confronted him about it, about like the long distance phone calls, which really made him upset. She met with a divorce attorney and she hired a private investigator, who ended up getting pictures of Richard kissing another flight attendant, standing outside of like her New Jersey residence. So it says here on November 18th of 1986 that her friends dropped her off at their residence. She had worked from a long flight. It says she was coming from Germany, and she was never seen again. So that night, a snowstorm hit that area, And then the next morning, Richard said he was taking his and her children to the sister's house in Westport. So when he arrived, um, Hella was not with him. Over the next few weeks, Richard gave Hella's friends a variety of stories as to why they were unable to reach her. That she was like visiting her mother in Denmark, she was visiting the Canary Islands with a friend. He just didn't know where her whereabouts were. Those are like three different things. Um, her friends were aware that he had a temper and they were very concerned. She told some of them that if something were to ever happen to her, don't assume it was an accident. And then on December 1st, the private investigator, Keith Mayo, reported her missing. So Richard Crafts, he was known to the local law enforcement for his work as a volunteer police officer. And then in 1986, it says he was working as a part-time police officer in the nearby town of Southbury. And then according to Mayo, Newtown police initially dismissed his concerns, saying that she would probably just turn up eventually. Also, if I'm butchering any of these words, I'm so sorry. I just woke up like 3 hours ago. I fell asleep at like 10 in the morning because, you know, how I've been telling you, I've been trying to spend a lot more time with my boyfriend now that we're working different shifts. So I'm still pretty tired. Um, the investigation, they were convinced that he was involved, but they were unable to persuade. Oh, okay, so it's saying that the private investigator. So the private investigator was convinced that like Richard was involved, but he was unable to persuade the local police to investigate him for what happened. So he took his findings to the county prosecutor, who eventually referred the case to the Connecticut State Police. Um, on December 26th, sorry, I was just looking at the comment. On December 26th, while Richard was vacationing with his children in Florida, troopers searched his home, and inside they found pieces of carpet taken from the master bedroom floor. The family's nanny recalled that a dark grapefruit-sized stain appeared in an area of the carpet, which was later missing. There was red stains on the side of the bed mattress. Um, and the forensic investigation was also led by the same person who was the investigator for the state police. His credit card records showed that there was like several weird purchases. And then when she vanished, there was a freezer that was not found in the house. Bed sheets, a comforter, and the rental of a wood chipper. Among papers provided to a private investigator, um, there was a receipt for a chainsaw as well. And the chainsaw was covered in hair and other things, which matched her DNA. So there's a key piece of evidence that was provided by Joseph Hine, who was a local man that worked for the town of Southbury, and he drove a town snowplow in the winter. And on the night of November 18th, hours after Helle had been last seen, Hine was plowing the roads during the snowstorm when he noticed a rental truck with a wood chipper attached. And it was parked close by the lake, or the shore of the lake. And it was only after the search of the Crafts' house that Hine reported what he had seen. He led the detectives to the location, and they examined the water's edge, found many pieces of metal, pieces of DNA, including a piece of a tooth. Some other stuff I'm not gonna name because it's a little graphic. The BLOOD was O-type, which was the same as Helle Crafts. And this led them to believe that she had been probably placed in the wood chipper. That Richard had been seen towing. That chainsaw that had the hair was found underwater, and the serial number was scrubbed away on it. But they were able to restore the number in the laboratory, it says. And the serial number was traced back to the retailer, who confirmed that it was Richard who purchased it. Sorry, it's very graphic. It's a lot more graphic than any other one I've done. I'm trying to watch my words here. Basically, what they have concurred is, or concluded, is that she was struck in the head twice, at least twice. It stained the carpet. He probably kept her body in the freezer until she was solid. Used the chainsaw and then put those pieces through the wood chipper. And then using the truck to put those remains on the shore. A prosecution for homicide usually requires a official determination of the unaliving of the alleged victim. It's usually done by like the identification of the body, which was not available in this case. So this is like the first time the first time to my understanding that they've ever convicted somebody without a physical body. With the help of like a forensic dentist, and a lot of other evidence that they had, they were able to issue a death certificate. Richard was immediately arrested on it. I believe it says January 13th on here. It's kind of following the previous sentence, so I could be wrong. It could have been sooner than that. I'm not gonna read this other part because that's very no. His trial began in May of 1988 in New London, where it was kind of it had to be moved due to like the publicity of the case. The case went to the jury after 54 days, and on July 15th, of 1988, the 17th day of jury deliberations, a single juror, the only juror in favor of acquittal, refused to continue, and the judge declared a mistrial. A second trial in Norwalk ended in a guilty verdict on November 21st of 1989, and Richard was sentenced to serve 50 years in prison. On January 30th of 2020, he was released from prison and sent to live at a halfway house in Bridgeport. He was released early because of statutory good time, which allows sentences to be shortened for good behavior and jailhouse jobs, pretty much. Yeah, mine is kind of crazy. It's very graphic, so I do apologize. I should have had my little trigger warning thing up. I was trying to, my mind is one train track, so once I started going, I just kept trying to go, so I apologize for the graphic nature of this one, but this one kind of was pointed out to me a lot more than the other ones, and I have we not talked about the wood chipper before or mentioned it? Or some people have said it in the comments. I swear people have talked about it before in the comments. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, that's mine.
Yay. It was good. That was a good one. Oh, Hello Kitty said she did.
Okay. I figured somebody did. I remember hearing or seeing something about a wood chipper.
Such a weird and random thing. Alrighty. So moving on. I think, as many of us know, there are many serial killers that we remember throughout history, and people can go back to and know exactly what they did with their crimes. And while there has been a show released on Apple TV on the individual that I'm covering tonight, it is pretty much one of those stories where he is one of the most forgotten serial unalivers there is to date. So his name is Larry Hall, and Larry Hall was born December 11th in 1962 in Wabash, Indiana, and he had a twin brother named Gary. Now, when they were born, Larry was essentially the weaker of the two twins. He was the second twin to come out, and it was believed that he may have suffered from like a lack of oxygen, and that basically when you have twins inside utero, sometimes one twin can absorb the other twin, and they believe that that might have happened somewhat in to cause some issues because he had a low IQ around 80, he had speech issues, and he was extremely socially awkward. He also grew up working in the family business kind of from an early age, which was honestly digging graves for the local cemetery. And that meant that pretty much from a young age, since his father was the individual who would dig the holes, he was surrounded by unaliving. He really kind of developed a fascination for it. And his brother would reveal later, after some time, that sometimes he would steal small items from the coffins before they went into the ground. Now, when Larry got older, the mutton chops, they're actually because he got really into Civil and Revolutionary War reenactments, to the point to where there was actually one movie they were filming, and the Civil War reenactment community that he was in was considered one of the best in the United States. And so they were invited to be like background in a movie that was being filmed. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was. And Larry was not seen anywhere on the film, but his brother Gary was given like a brief second on the screen when he's like climbing down a hill or going down a hill or something. So basically he's kind of your everyday creep, kind of you know, like the guy who changes the oil at your, not creep, I didn't mean that. He's your basic everyday kind of guy that you just don't really recognize. He's the guy that changes your oil, and you have a business deal with him, and then you go on with your life and you don't even remember him, type thing. But in September of 1993, there was a 15-year-old girl, and her name was Jessica Roach. And she was riding her bicycle near her home in Georgetown, Illinois, and her parents said that she never came back home after she was supposed to be back. So weeks later, her body was found in Indiana in a cornfield by a farmer who was actually out and was like on his combine working the field. He had seen a black mass and actually thought that it was trash bags. So he got down from the combine to go clear them, and it ended up being a badly decomposed body. So essentially, she had been out long enough that her head had been removed from her body, and they did find it, but she was so decomposed that when they did find her, they basically asked the mother for dental records so they could confirm that it was her. And the mother was pretty much distraught to find that her dentist didn't have any records on her. That for some reason, her dental records weren't there. Thankfully, when Jessica was a very young girl, Peggy, can you please settle down? Sorry. Let me pull up my notes again. Okay, I need you to settle down, okay? When Jessica was in elementary school, police had actually come to her school and discussed what it means to like be a police officer and what they do in investigations and stuff. And she essentially had a fingerprint card that her mother had saved for like a decade. And her mother was able to pull that out, and they were able to use a fingerprint to identify her body. So in the coming weeks, they did find out that she had been kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered. And witnesses actually were able to say that there had been a dark van in the area, and one witness was able to give a license plate number, which led back to Larry Hall. Now, when they arrested, or they started questioning Larry, he actually confessed in chilling detail what had happened. The problem is that Larry has a really bad habit of confessing to crimes and then coming back and saying, no, that was just a dream I had, and taking back everything. So when the police kind of questioned him on this one, he wasn't really able to go back on that, because this wasn't really the first time Larry had been looked at or tied to the connection of a crime. So for the first time, it really wasn't overlooked. He had previously spoken with cops about a missing person, and they basically thought he confessed to a crime because he was looking for attention, because all of the stuff he gave wasn't leading them back to the person or the body. So as investigators began digging into the Jessica Roach situation, they did find a list of women's names with some that were matching missing person cases across the Midwest, and a wooden figurines of bound women that he had carved. So he was now linked, please stop, by circumstantial and partial admissions to dozens of unsolved cases, including one named Trisha Reitler, who was a college student whose body they still haven't found. But the bodies... Okay, Peggy, please. So without the bodies, they really haven't been able to convict him of anything. Years later, he would file an appeal, and after he was convicted of what happened to Jessica Roach and given in prison for the kidnapping, for the kidnapping and the murder, he basically filed for appeal, and if he had gotten out, which they didn't want, he was going to be able to go free. So the FBI actually got involved, because the police officer who was in charge of the Jessica Roach thing had actually reached out to them and said, look, I think he's involved in more. I think something's going on, and we need to figure this out. The issue is that Larry Hall is a very socially awkward person, and when it comes to police officers, he doesn't trust them. So they had to find somebody that could basically help them get information from Larry without being obvious. So enter this individual named James Keene, who people knew as Jimmy, that was not a cop or a detective. He was a former high school football star from Illinois, and the son of a decorated police officer that did not follow in his father's footsteps. Instead, he basically was in the rug trade. He sold coke and Bob Marley. And by the 1990s, in his 20s, he was so successful that he was pretty much making like $1 million a year off of this. He had cars, he had money, he was the kind of man women like to be around. And in 1996, Jimmy was actually sentenced to 10 years of federal prison for rug trafficking. So when he was in a low security prison, they basically looked at him because they knew that he was different from most inmates because he was very charismatic. He was very good at reading people. He was really smart, and he could make friends in minutes. So the FBI approached him only 10 months, close to 2 years later in 1998, with a deal that basically if he went undercover for them, got close to Larry, and then got him to confess to more murders and was able to locate the bodies for them, he would get to walk free. They would just clear his record, and that was the deal. So his father had had a stroke, and he was extremely close to his father. His father had had a stroke, he found out, and so he decided that he was going to do it simply because he really wanted to get out and go be with his father before his father passed away. So he was transferred to Springfield Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Missouri, where Larry was housed after he agreed to do this. And he was actually told to not speak to Larry for the first 6 months that he was there because Larry would basically be really skittish. And if he kind of clammed up, he wasn't going to come out of that shell, and then Jimmy would be stuck. So the key to getting to him was not pushing too fast. So at first, he kind of bumped into Larry the first day he went there. He was like, I'm not gonna take my time with this, like in terms of like befriending him. I'm going to try to get this as fast as possible so that I can get out and be with my father before he passes away. So the first day he's in, he bumps into Larry, and they have a brief communication, and he says something about how cool Larry is, which kind of, is something Larry's not used to. And then a couple weeks later, he was in the recreational room with Larry, and Larry was watching like a Dateline type TV show, and another inmate came in and changed the channel. And as they were sitting there, Jimmy says that Larry looked at him and in a low whisper had actually said, "Hey, I was watching that." And so to get Larry to warm up to him, Jimmy actually got up and basically punched the other inmate through 3 rows of chairs and was put in the hole for a little while. But when he came out, he had Larry's like trust, because Larry was like, holy shit, this man did this for me. He thinks I'm cool and all of that stuff. So Jimmy basically kind of studied Larry, noticed he spent his days carving little wooden figurines, and Jesus Christ, this cat is driving me nuts. Okay. He spent his days carving tiny figurines. Each one was like a woman bound with her wrist or bound at the wrist and ankles. And he would pretend to be fascinated by Larry's reenactment stories, the history, the travel, and the conversation slowly started to drift to women and then to girls. So he found that Larry was hinting at dozens of unalivings, and Jimmy actually did see a map where there were a bunch of red dots marking different burial sites, they believe, and he had started to carve these falcon figurines that he said he was going to send to his brother because falcons look over the unalive, and he was going to have his brother put these falcons at various locations, i.e. the dots on the map. So Jimmy knew he was getting somewhere, but he still was like not getting what he needed to get out of prison. So Larry was starting to kind of get paranoid and becoming a little distant. So basically, when Jimmy had seen the map with the dots and the falcons, that night he figured, this is the best I'm going to get. And he had actually like went in to Larry's and told him exactly how he feels about him. And just basically said he was like disgusting. He was the worst human being in the world, blah, 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 blah. and he got thrown back into solitary confinement, which was not something the FBI learned for about 2 weeks. And when they came and they got Jimmy out, he told them about the map, he told them about the figurines, he told them any confessions that Larry had given him, and basically when they went looking for it, Larry had already gotten rid of everything, because he realized that the police officer from Jessica's case had kind of set him up to come in there and get confessions on other murders he'd done. So although he did not get locations of the bodies, Jimmy was actually allowed to go free and was, had his sentence or whatever reversed, and his father would live for 5 years after his stroke, and he was able to spend time with him that way. And he's definitely changed his life around. But as for Larry Hall, he has never been charged with murders. He has confessed and then takes it back continuously. And he remains in Butner Federal Correctional Complex in North Carolina, serving life without parole for Jessica Roach's kidnapping, because he was not arrested for her murder, or he was not convicted of her murder. Jimmy was allowed to walk free, and he went on to write a memoir, which was In with the Devil, which did inspire the Apple TV series Blackbird. And he does still give interviews about the case and admits that the things Larry told him haunts him to this day. So it's very possible that Larry will pass away without revealing where his victims are. At this point, they do pretty much have a solid understanding of at least a couple victims that are his. They just haven't been able to find the bodies. But they do think that a part of the hiding of them was in his own confessions. He would dig graves for these women, and sometimes they were shallower, sometimes they were deeper. So he definitely was trying to conceal them as much as possible. And that's my story this week. Yeah, he's a super complicated man. And I haven't watched the series yet, but when I started getting into this one, I was like, yeah, I need to see that series now.
To say, that's some real coward shit to not even admit to all of the shit that you did. You're at the end of the line, you've already got life, you're gonna be in there for the rest of your days, might as well just admit it.
Yeah. I mean, there were, one of the reasons they were able to kind of they're able to tie a lot of the murders to him, was basically because he was doing the reenactments. And so wherever he went for a reenactment, that's where a victim went missing. And there was a college student at Indiana Wesleyan University where he had done it. He had basically offered her a ride and then didn't give it to her. But he definitely has cognitive issues. He was bullied in school, and his brother said he was kind of the outcast. I think his brother actually said he hung out with the misfits or the stinky crew. And I think that he knows what he did was wrong, and he knew what he was doing was wrong, but he also is so fucking socially awkward and shit that he definitely was messed up. I need you to stop. I have asked you to stop. This cat, the whole time, running circles, digging her claws into me. So yeah. The show is called Blackbird. It's on Apple TV. It looks really good too. Why is everybody looking at me right now? Yeah, Peggy. She will not leave me alone right now. Which is weird, because I can sit and call her all night long and she won't come to me. But when I'm busy doing something, she literally, I would put her on the ground, she'd hop up on the table and just do a circle. Like
Like it's always Peggy.
it's always Peggy. It is. It's always Peggy.
Right, those are some good stories.
That was. I think we did good this week. We did good. Bless you.
Thank you.
I think Friends with Attitudes is talking about the files Calhoun has.
Well, do you want to restart so the saves?
Well, I can't stream her. Like, she doesn't like people streaming her. But I definitely want to restart so it saves, and then we can maybe listen to a little bit of Stephanie from earlier or something.
All right.
All right, I'll see you guys.